My name is Deirdre Jones. I'm an environmental science student up at the high school. I'm interested in learning about the environment because I think it's important to understand how we impact the environment and how the environment impacts us.
Hi, I'm Socorro. I'm an environmental student at Half Moon Bay High School. I'm interested about learning about the environment because I grew up playing outside all the time from day to night. I think it's really important to learn about the environment because we need to know how much of an impact we have and how we could help make it a better place.
Hi, I'm Emma, and I'm an environmental science student at Half Moon Bay High School. And something that really interests me about environmental science is learning about how humans affect the environment and natural systems. So right now I'm standing in my backyard, and sometimes I can see really cool birds, and they're kind of loud right now, but that's okay.
Today I am on my balcony and I would like to present to you Alvaro Jaramillo, who is a local ornithologist who's going to be teaching us all about the birds who live right here on the coastside.
I hope you really enjoyed the presentation, and I hope that when you're outside and you see a bird, you start thinking about it.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alvaro Jaramillo. I'm a biologist and also a bird expert living here on the coast. And I wanted to give you all a little bit of information about our local birds, as well as why they're here and how all of this, what makes it basically the coastside a great place to look at birds. So, you know, just like the Mavericks is well known throughout the world as like a world-class destination for big wave surfers, our coastside birds are really abundant as well as diverse. That means there's a lot of birds and there's a lot of species here. And then you could say it's one of the best places in all of North America to be watching birds. So really, we are like the Mavericks for birds. And there are different ways you can look at things in terms of, you know, bird numbers or bird species. There are two different words that I want you to learn. One is richness, and that's the number of birds, you know, that are there, sort of the number of individuals. But diversity is a little bit different. Diversity is how many different types of birds there are, and sort of the number of species, and then also the species and how common they are and how likely you are to find one or the other. That's diversity. So you could have a lot of species and also have just a few individuals of each, or have a bunch of species and have many individuals of each. So that second situation is more diverse. We have a lot of different habitats here, you know, from forest to the beach to backyards to, you know, chaparral, shrub, and all of these different types of micro habitats. And that's what makes the local coast so good for birds and other creatures as well in general. If you were to sort of think about what makes this part of the world really special, is we have a climate type that is not found in many places on Earth. It's called a Mediterranean climate. And if you look at this chart right down at the bottom, these are the months starting in January going all the way to December. And the blue bars is how much rain you have. So January has a lot of rain, and that rain really sort of stops about May. And then from May to October, we have almost no rain. That's really unusual in the world, to have all the rain happen in one part of the year, the winter, and then almost no rain in the summer. And that's part of what describes a Mediterranean climate. And just to show you how unusual this is on Earth, those little purple areas all over the different parts of the world are Mediterranean climates. Obviously, the Mediterranean area has the most Mediterranean climate, but California has a little patch there, Chile, South Africa, and Australia. Those are the only places in the world that have this kind of climate type. The other thing you might think about is when you go to the beach, it's cold. It's really cold water. And, although a lot of people that don't live here think California is really, really hot all the time, it's not. And there are two things I'm going to talk to you about what makes this water cold and why it's important. If this map here is the west coast of North America, going from Canada up here down to Baja California. And you see the arrow going down south, that orange, that's a cold water current. And the way you want to look at it, it's almost like a river of cold water coming from Canada and Alaska that brings cold water to us. And then in the spring and summer, we have consistent winds. And water has this really interesting characteristic that if you push it away with wind, the water below has to come up to take its place. And that cold, again, cold water from the bottom comes up to the top. What's kind of interesting is that all that cold water has a lot of food in it. So that's why we have whales and all sorts of other creatures here, but it makes our ocean cold. And what really, if you had to think about what really makes it special, apart from being Mediterranean climate, is the fog. And the fog is created by that cold water. The fog, you know, can bring water into the hills. And even during that time of year where there's no rain, that little drip from the trees down onto the forest helps to keep the forest moist. Then you go to the other side of the hill and it's really, really dry and warm and sunny, while here it's colder and foggier. That distance going from here to San Mateo is not that long, but if you had to think about it, our habitat and our weather here is so different from San Mateo's in terms of cold and how much moisture there is, that in other parts of North America, you would have to drive north or south hundreds and hundreds of miles to get that difference in climate. So the fog makes us really special and makes us also quite a different habitat type and weather type than other parts of the even the peninsula. So let me talk to you now about some birds, right? So now you know what's special about our coast. We have a diversity of habitats, we have a Mediterranean climate, and we have the cold water offshore that creates fog, and also the you know, the fog is held by the mountains, by the Santa Cruz Mountains. So that is all special. If you go to the beach, you might see these birds. They're little white birds that sort of go in and out of the waves. You've probably seen them. They chase the waves. They're called Sanderlings. And they're a kind of sandpiper. They're pecking with those bills to find food that the wave brings in and takes out. If you're looking at other sandpipers, other shorebirds out there, one that is relatively rare, and for that reason it's well known, because it nests here and it winters here in a very small population, and it loves sand. It's the snowy plover. Just want you to go back to the Sanderling. Look at the difference in the beaks. The beak is really long on the Sanderling, and although they're grayish and white, the plover has sort of a smaller beak, and bigger eyes. So they also hide in the sand. So if you go to the beach and see birds hiding in little cups in the sand, you might be seeing snowy plovers, and they're quite rare. They're actually threatened. So people work very hard to try to keep their populations going and you know, their conservation. Another bird of the shores, which you can see with our rocks, so the harbor is a really good place to see them, is the black oyster catcher. And this one is all dark, and it almost looks like it has a carrot sticking out of its for a bill. And that makes it really sort of easy to identify. And if you see them, think about the fact that they eat really, really hard things like clams, not necessarily oysters, and they have to use that bill to get inside the clam and like peck the muscle that allows the clam to open up. And they teach their young how to open up clams. And there are two different ways they can do it, but the parents always teach the young the way they know how to do it. So in a sense, if everything is get taught and passed on from one generation to the other generation, you could say these birds actually have culture. So that's not something that's genetically there, it's something they learn from their family. The Wimbrell is common also on the beach and in the harbor, and it's a bigger shorebird. It almost looks like a little, it's not quite the size of a chicken, but the key is to look at the beak, and it curves down. And there's not many birds that have a beak that curves down. And if you think about it, it's almost like tweezers, and that's how they use that beak to pick up food. And it's different from some of its relatives. So the Wimbrell's here on the left with the down curved beak. This one on the right, it's called the marble godwit. It's also found on our beaches and in the harbor. But look at how the bill is straight. And it can poke straight down with that bill into the mud or into the sand to find food. Well, the Wimbrell has to sort of do a little bit more picking, and they do a lot more picking from the surface of the sand. So this gets at the point that birds might be in the same place and even actually in the same flocks, but they're eating different things because of the types of beaks they have. And it can get to an even more different stage in that this marble godwit here, the one on the left, looks kind of shorter beak than the one on the right. The male has a shorter bill than the female. And the female then can, because it has a longer bill and even longer legs, can feed in deeper mud or deeper water. So even within a species, you can have variation in the form to allow these birds to eat slightly different foods and therefore not be in complete direct competition with each other. The Wimbrell, getting back to the Wimbrell, is a super good long distance migrant. So it breeds way up in the Arctic of Alaska. And when they're passing through Half Moon Bay in California, they're just on their way south, or maybe they're hanging out for the winter. But some of these Wimbrells go all the way down to Chile. And we know this because we're tracking them with, well, scientists have been tracking them with satellite tags. And you can see this one sleeping here not only has a number on his leg, but has an antenna of a satellite backpack. And this is how we get these maps to show how these birds migrate. And in fact, some of them migrate for hundreds and hundreds of miles offshore over the ocean. So they just do that in one long nonstop flight. Especially thinking about geese, migratory birds like geese that learn their pathways of migration from their parents. They use very specific flyways, and they've been described as 4 different flyways. And we in the Pacific live on the Pacific flyway. And it's an interesting concept to think almost like rivers of birds, all kind of coming from various places and coalescing into these flyways, and then they fold them together to get to their wintering areas. Now this picture might look a little scary, but all I want to point out here is you've probably seen those movies of superheroes that have amazing, ways of, talents, or they can change shape, or they can see something, or X-ray vision or something. It's now thought that a lot of birds have these really long, complicated molecules inside their eyes. And these molecules actually shift to a positive or negative side, and they can line up with the magnetic fields of the Earth. The Earth has magnetic fields, like a South Pole and a North Pole. And the birds can therefore, in their eyes, actually like a super being, see when they're going to the north or when they're going to the south by the angles that they're seeing in these special molecules in their eyes. And there are various other things that birds do to find out where they're going. They can see the stars, they can look at the sun's rays, even just recognize places they've been to before. So it's quite amazing what they do. And some birds actually smell their world. So these sooty shearwaters, which sometimes are really common in the summer as like a big black mass of birds just in the ocean, they smell their food, and they have such a keen sense of smell that can smell some of their food for over a mile away, and they can then fly to it and feed. They're also amazing migrants. These are birds that were that hatched and bred in New Zealand, and they make these big, long figure-8 flights all over the ocean. And many of them hang out for part of their life here in California. That round trip is 40,000 miles a year. What I find amazing is that when they get to their nesting areas, they smell their island. They don't just know where it is. And when they get to their burrow, they nest in a little burrow that they dig, they smell their mate. So they can actually figure out that their mate is there, the female or the male, by the smell. If you're thinking, maybe you've seen this, we have a lot of fish, anchovy, little fish, squid offshore. Sometimes you'll see the pelicans dive right into the water, and they're visually hunting for food. So we have birds that can, find their food by smell. We obviously have birds that find their food by seeing it. What I find kind of interesting about this is that if you've ever put, in a clear glass, a spoon, it looks like the spoon is bent because of the refraction of the light, as it goes through water. So when pelicans are seeing the fish underneath, the fish aren't actually where the pelican sees it. So they have to adjust for the refraction of that image in order to get them. And they somehow can do that. I wouldn't be able to do it, but they can do it. And, these pelicans breed to our south, and when they come north, they bring their friends, these very dark looking gulls or seagulls called Heermann's gulls with red beaks. And the Heermann's gulls will actually go and feed of anything that the pelican leaves, sort of the leftovers from the pelican. So you'll see sometimes a pelican diving and these dark birds all come flying into the pelican, and those are Heermann's gulls. And you can see that right now on the coast if you're looking at the pelicans. Let me tell you about some raptors and wing structures. The peregrine falcon is the fastest bird on Earth. In fact, it's the fastest creature on Earth, and they have very pointy wings to go fast. And if you think about it, that's exactly what the engineers that created, some of these fast-flying airplanes have done, is to make these pointy, long, swept-back wings on jet aircraft, in a sense, copying the peregrine falcon. The form of wings is dependent on their function. So when you see a bird with really pointy wings, it probably goes fast. Then a red-tailed hawk, which is also quite common here on the coast with the dark, bright red tail when they're adults, they have very broad wings. And these broad wings, they use to catch rising columns of air. And you'll see the hawks going around in circles, getting higher and higher and higher because they're looking for food from above. So they'll soar over using sort of the rising columns of air. It's really, energy efficient, and then they'll find their food. So quite a different looking wing than you would, see on a peregrine. These hawks are looking for voles, field mice in a sense, that actually become very common every so often and rare at other times. This is a year where we have a lot of voles, so we will have a lot of hawks this year. And also, apart from hawks, we have the white-tailed kite. Now look at its wings, they're kind of pointy. And the kite finds food by hovering, or it's actually called kiting, and in towards the wind, and it'll just sit in one spot up in the air. And you'll see this sometimes, and they're looking at a vole, and then they'll pounce on it from above. So again, a different kind of wing for a different kind of hunting. The ultimate wing for efficient flight is of an albatross. And while you might have never seen an albatross, they are here. It's just that they're 20 miles offshore. You have to go on a boat to see albatross, but Half Moon Bay is actually a really good place to see albatross when you're way out offshore. And what they do is the wind and the waves, especially the waves, create a pressure. So it pushes the air right in front of that wave up a little bit. And they can use these thin and very efficient wings to catch that column of rising air. And then they move up in the air and then can fly down to catch the next column of rising air in front of a wave. So in a sense, they can fly all over the world, sometimes hours and hours and hours without flapping, just using the energy created by the waves, which in turn was created. The gulls aren't as efficient, but you'll see them doing this type of thing too. Sometimes right over the cliffs, they'll be moving through, getting a rising column of air that's coming up off the cliff, and they won't have to flap for many miles if they have that situation. This is our common gull, the western gull, that has kind of a beak that is almost banana yellow, and they're blue-gray above and white otherwise. It's a special gull in that even though we think of kind of gulls or seagulls as being super common, the western gull only breeds in California, and the biggest number of them is right around here. A place called the Farallon Islands has the biggest colony in the world, and also where we live in the harbor, they nest in there. Now, if you see gulls, and some of them are really white-headed, and other ones are like funny brown, and they differ, but they kind of look all the same size. Those are different ages. They're brown when they're younger, and then they become white and gray when they're older. Now, I'm just going to end by just showing you a few species that are also locally common and easy, some of them easy to identify. But first, I want to say that if you're looking for birds, go to places where different habitats meet. So here's a creek going into the ocean. This is Pilarcitos Creek. So you have saltwater and freshwater. Go to the edge of a forest where you have, shrub or grassland as well as trees. Those are the places that will have the most diversity, most number of species. And if you see big white birds, those are egrets. There are two kinds of egrets we have here. One of them has a black beak and yellow feet. That's called a snowy egret. Easy. You look for and the black beak snowy egret. The one that's bigger with the yellow beak and the black legs is the great egret. They're both white, but just look at those colors of legs and beaks and you can separate them. In your backyard, you might see these little brownish birds that have red on them. They have red on the crown where that arrow is. They have red on the throat and red on the belly. Those are male house finches. The females are just the same, but they're brown. They don't have any of the red. So if you see these red birds in your backyard with brown streaky birds, you're probably seeing house finches, one of our common backyard birds. Now this one is easy to identify because of its behavior. It's called the black Phoebe, and it's blackish brown with a white belly. But watch it because its tail is always wagging. It wags its tail. All you have to see is that wagging tail, and you know you're seeing a black Phoebe. So you'll be able now, see one in your backyard, see that wagging tail, and tell your friends, hey, look, black Phoebe, and they won't know how you knew that, but it works, and you'll be right. There are two big blackbirds here, the crow, American crow, and the common raven. And they're really similar, and they're often confused because they're both big and black. But the raven has a super big, almost scary looking beak, and they're more shaggy looking all over. The crow is smaller. It's got sort of a smaller beak, and they look more smooth looking. When they fly, the raven has a tail that looks almost like a diamond shape and very pointy wings, almost like an or a hawk in the way the wings look. While the crow is sort of more like a normal bird with a squared off tail. So even though they're all just black and there's nothing special to look for, you can separate them by the way that their beaks and tails look and their overall size, and it's more about their shape. And both of them are very common here where we live. And I'll just end by showing you one of the hummingbirds that lives here. It's called the Anna's hummingbird, and this is the only one that stays with us all year long. So right now, if you have a hummingbird in your backyard, it almost surely is going to be an Anna's hummingbird. So you can safely identify an Anna's hummingbird now all the way through till about February, as it'll be the only found. But if you say, hey, they're different. Some of them are like, have this raspberry color on their head or throat and some don't. That's the difference between the male and the female. And as you get more into watching birds and figuring out how they look, there's a lot more complexity. But what's interesting for me is that it's fun. It's actually almost like a game of finding these new things that you've never seen and then understanding why one looks different from the other, or even how they fit into their environment, and knowing, that a hummingbird feeds on nectar on flowers, it has to have a very specific type of beak. And all of those things make watching birds, and especially here in Half Moon Bay, pretty amazing, because we live in one of the best places in the world to watch birds and understand birds. So thank you very much. I hope you learned a little bit about birds, nature, and habitats of Half Moon Bay, and enjoy the rest of the lessons. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jaramillo. Today, following our presentation, we're going to be creating our own birds in the form of paper airplanes. You're going to need 4 sheets of paper and a flat work surface. We're going to be creating 4 paper airplanes to represent 4 different wing types. They are the Laughing Gull, the Turkey Vulture, the Peregrine Falcon, and the American Crow.
The Laughing Gull.
Okay, so for the first airplane, we're going to be making the Laughing Gull bird, and this is going to represent the active soaring wings. All you're going to need is just a flat surface. I'm doing this on my floor, but you could really do it anywhere. and one piece of just random piece of paper. So the first step is that you're gonna fold this paper in half long ways. So then the next thing you're gonna do, you're gonna open it up and you're gonna get the top corner and fold it right into the middle. Just like that, and you're gonna do it on both sides. And then for the next step, you're gonna do the same exact thing. You're just gonna get the edge and you're gonna fold it right to the middle. Just like that. And you're gonna do the same exact thing on the other side. And then for the next step, you're just gonna fold it in half again. Get both corners, so the top and the bottom, and you're gonna fold them into the center. And you do the same exact thing on the other side. You're gonna get the corners, you're gonna fold it in, and you're just kind of gonna match them up. Just like that, and then you're done. You have your bird.
The turkey vulture.
Okay, so for the next airplane, we're gonna be making the turkey vulture. So for the first step, what you're gonna wanna do, you're gonna get the top corner and you're just gonna put it so that they meet at the edge. Okay, so then once you're at this point, what you're gonna wanna do, you're gonna fold the top of it just a little bit. I would say like about a ½ an inch, so just like that. And you're gonna do that same thing 8 more times. Okay, so then once you're here, you're gonna turn the plane over and you're gonna fold this just right in half. And then the next step is that you're gonna fold the edges of the wing down to meet the center. You're just gonna fold this down just like that. And you do the same exact thing for the other side. But then once you're done, you're gonna have a plane that looks something like this.
The Peregrine Falcon.
So the next bird we're gonna make is the Peregrine Falcon, and these are gonna represent the high-speed wings. So for the first step, what you're gonna do is you're gonna fold the paper in half long ways, and then you're gonna open it back up, and you're gonna get the top, and you're gonna fold it over about 2 inches, and then you're gonna fold it one more time again. Okay, so once you folded it in half, you're gonna do that one more time. Okay, so then once you're here, what you're gonna do is you're gonna fold this corner in to the middle. Okay, so then once you've done this, you're gonna flip it over and you're gonna fold it lengthwise again. Okay, so then once you folded it like this, you're just gonna fold it like in half, just like that, and you're gonna do this on both edges. Once you've done this on both sides, you're gonna fold it one more time, just like the same exact thing on the other side. And then once you've done this, you are finished and you have your bird.
The American crow.
Okay, so for the next bird, we're gonna be making the American crow, and these are gonna represent elliptical wings. So for the first step, what you're gonna do is you're gonna fold this in half, and then you're gonna open it back up, and you're gonna get the 2 edges right here, and you're gonna fold them in. And then once you're here, you're gonna fold this in just like that. And then you're gonna get the top edge and you're gonna fold it into the middle, just like that. And then you're gonna do the same exact thing on the other side. And this is how it's gonna look like. And then once you're here, you're gonna get just these little tips and you're gonna fold them just a little bit like that. And it's gonna look something like this. And then the next step is you're gonna flip it over and you're gonna fold it lengthwise again, just along that crease that we made the first time. And then the next thing you're gonna do, you're gonna get the edge right here and you're gonna fold it in to the center and you do the same exact thing on the other side. And there you go. You have your American crow. Okay, so now it's your turn to go make these birds. I hope you had fun.
Test them. Find a hallway or an open space. Throw them and compare their distances. I hope you enjoyed.